So welcome to a quick overview of Pear Deck. I am in no way a Pear Deck expert. I have been able to tinker with it enough to demonstrate some of its main purposes. As a district, we bought it over the summer, so a lot of the features that we have now were not available when we had students prior. So I'm going to try to show you as much of it as I can. We'll practice a little bit together because I think that's the best way to get a sense of it. There are some things that are confusing to it until you see it, until you get to kind of touch it and experience it. After that, it becomes much more user-friendly. So if you haven't done so, if you want to add Pear Deck, open up Google Slideshow. You can always search for this add-on, but Pear Deck is a slideshow add-on. Before we continue, I stole a lot of this from Mike Muhammad over at Brookfield Central. At Mo Physics is his Twitter handle. He is a Pear expert extraordinaire and gave a PD over the summer called Pear Fair, like going to a carnival. They had 2 days worth of PD for Pear Deck, and it was quite entertaining, quite interesting, quite helpful. You're welcome to check him out. All that information, all those sessions are recorded and available via the internet. So if you see anything here that you want to add another person of contact, he is quite responsive as well. And I did steal some of this information from him with permission. So, as teachers, that's the easiest way to do things, right? Build off the shoulders of giants. All right, so if you haven't done so, here's how you would find the add-on in Google Slideshow under the add-on section. Search for Pear Deck, and then simply add it or install it. If you aren't able to do that at this time, you can always come back and do that. I'll share this slide deck with you after we're done, so you'll have that opportunity. I heard somebody speaking, and I want to point out that at any point you have a question, if I'm being confusing, if I'm going too fast, if I'm going too slow, please, 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 please speak up. We're going to find out very quickly it's awkward to talk to a computer, not having much gauge of feedback. We're used to looking at an audience and getting a sense of where they're at with us. So you are not in any way throwing me off by interrupting. In fact, I encourage it, and it helps me gauge where you guys are at. So please feel free to do so. Once you've added it, and if you're not doing that now, you can always come back. You can find it by clicking on add-ons, but most of the time the Pear Deck will actually pop up between tools and add-ons, so you won't even have to click to find it. You'll see the little Pear icon right there in your Google Slideshow. Before I go any further, I just want to get a general sense of where we're at. So you should see a poll launching here. If you could respond to that poll in Zoom, I'm just getting some entry data that I can compare to our post-exit data and see if I was relatively successful or not in this workshop. This is not something I do professionally. I am just an English teacher at the high school. But, we are teachers, so you might as well have data to drive us forward, right? Okay, so it looks like most of us are roughly around here, let me share the results with you. Most of us are going, what the heck is this? All the way up to, I've tinkered around, but I probably haven't done a live session with students. And it's that live session with students, and by live, I should rephrase that, actually running a Pear Deck lesson with students is where some of the functions of this can get confusing because you haven't got a chance to actually see it. That's something I hope to show you today. And as I lead up to that, if there are questions you haven't set up, let me know. And when we're in the session part, let me know as well. There are some things I can answer, some things I can give you hypothetical answers to because I haven't actually been able to experience it. But I will try to answer as many questions as I can, and I promise to make notes of things that I cannot and to follow up with those people so that we are all learning together. Okay. So what is Pear Deck? Right, that's the first question everyone asks. At its core, it's a Google Slideshow add-on. So that means it's a program that works within Slideshow. But it also has another function that operates outside of Slideshow. So when we use Google Slides, just like PowerPoint, it's nothing more than a visual. It can't collect data. It can't ask questions and solicit feedback. Pear Deck allows you that second function. So in the beginning stage, what it is creating slides that ask your students questions. and they're able to interact with those slides to show their understanding. While they're showing their understanding, you'll be able to collect that data. So Pear Deck, when you start a Pear Deck lesson, which I'll show you in a second, it's going to open up a dashboard that allows you to see what students are answering in the slideshow, but the students do not see what other students are answering. So this mimics, in a digital environment, you asking a question in class and perhaps asking them to write something down, and then you walking around and looking at what students have written. You can see what they've done, but they can't see what other people have done. Why is that beneficial? Well, it allows them to take that risk. They can show what they think they know, they can give their opinion on something, they can take that risk, and it's not public. Can it be made public? Yes. Can you give feedback to it privately in PearGrid? Yes. And that's the whole second part of the house, the whole back of the house of Pear Deck, which we will look at. And for right now, that's probably the most confusing part, because if you haven't actually started a session in Pear Deck, you haven't seen that functionality yet. So when I was first learning about it, what made the most sense to me was being able to see an actual student slide. If you cannot see this slide at this time, the new student slide I'm popping up, please stop me and let me know. It's of no value for me to continue if you can't see it. Here's an example of a student slide that typically starts a session. You can turn this slide on for every Pear Deck session you want in the settings portion, which I can show you later. What it does is it gives you a gauge, right? Where are my kids at? It's kind of like you're standing in the front of the door of your classroom and kids are coming in and you're interacting with them to get a sense of what their disposition is for that day. I'm feeling pretty happy because I'm getting to play with technology, so I'm going to put a smiley face. How does a teacher see that? I'll show you when we get to the back of the house. If you want a direct copy of the original template that I'm using, it's down here, bit.ly. I'll share all this with you again so you don't have to write anything doun now. And if you haven't added Mo Physics on Twitter, I encourage you to do so. If you're on Twitter and you want to get more information about the 2-day session that was taught in Pear Deck, PearFairPD is the hashtag. So here's a student slide, and this is a draw slide. So they have pencil, highlighter, lines. They can also enter text boxes and they can erase things, and a palette of colors. So it says circle how you're feeling. I'm going to click black, pencil. Now I know we just did this, but it really is just a demonstration of the type of slides that you can give students to interact with. Go away, email. Each student will get a copy of the slide in the Pear Deck session, and no student will be able to see what the other person's writing. Oh, good. Thank you, Vic. If you can also choose to add text boxes, which I'm going to demonstrate later. This is text. There it is. So you can see they can pick colors and stuff like that. My son's in virtual K3, and he does some of these kind of drawings with his Chromebook for practicing making faces and other stuff. So students might already be familiar with this basic interface. Oh, and it looks like I only got one. Oh, there we go. Okay. You can use it for exit tickets. Students would be able to enter in their answers, adding the text box there. Text box option again. Oh, another type of slide you can use is an embedded website. So you can put a video, a website directly into a Google slide. That's not abnormal for Google Slides. We're used to seeing the ability to add video or to add or embed a website. If you've ever seen a timer on a slideshow, that's typically a YouTube video that the person embedded on that slideshow. But Pear Deck lets you go, I believe, a step further. I haven't tried simulators in a slideshow outside of Pear Deck because as an English teacher, I don't have many simulations I need you to run. But you'll notice this website on the right side is just a simulator from phet.colorado.edu. And you can run that simulator live in that Pear Deck. Let's throw some neurons here, some protons over there. It's like my grandma cooking, just throw a little pinch of everything in. Now, the problem with this is that they can't save their work. This is strictly just a sandbox. I've worked with a couple of math teachers at the high school to see, is there a way for a student to share what they're doing here in Pear Deck? And there's not. They theoretically could take a screenshot and share it with you later, but in terms of inside this Pear Deck, you could give a simulator embed it in a slideshow, let them play around with it for a little bit, but they wouldn't be able to show you what it is they did in terms of an actual answer like the other interactive slides. You can also offer multiple choice questions in Pear Deck. And this is what they would look like to the student. So what you're seeing right now is the complete student view of the different slides Pear Deck offers you to insert into a Google slide. Chris, I want you to know that you're top of my gallery and your facial expressions are confusing me. You look inquisitive, you look confused. If there are questions, let me know. If not, I love the fact that you have a very interactive listening face.
It's more so I was trying to read. I think I need a new prescription of my glasses.
Yeah, ironically, Chris, my name is Chris, and I have brand new prescription glasses right now, and everything looks like I'm in a fishbowl. Okay, so multiple choice is one of the questions. Let me stop. If you're entering stuff in the chat, I am going to check it out in real time so we can help. Simulators, I don't have a lot of experience with. So the question was about the simulators. I just know that Pear Deck can offer it, and this is an example of a science-based one. As an English teacher, I don't have a lot of use for that, so I haven't played around much. But you can see that instead of sending them to the website to tinker, they can tinker within the slideshow itself. So if you've used simulators in class, maybe giving them a link to a website, just know that you can embed that into a Pear Deck presentation, and they don't have to lead that slideshow to do so. If there are things you want me to look up for you about simulators, feel free to put it in the chat, and I definitely will do that as an action item. Okay, so there are multiple choice questions. So I like this one. A lot of my the the language arts department uses this quite a bit, where they have text boxes for things, and just a formative check. What are these things? Write them out in Spanish. I do not know these things. J'étudie français. Here's your math people drawing lines and graphs. Because remember, you can try to freelance it, and this is how steady my hand is. Why I am never going to be a surgeon. But we also have lines that we can use as well. Much straighter. Oh, almost did. My math people, what's the slope of this line? No slope, right? Okay, I remember something from high school. I hope that was right. Here's a fun one that can be used by a lot of different people. It's called the drag and drop type. You can pick certain types of movable icons. Can you design your own? Right now, no. But what you can do is ask them to move a draggable item or items over a slide in order to give feedback or to be creative. This one is creating a plot generator. I've used this kind of like with the old Shakespeare toolkit, where they have 3 different columns and they would put their lines over it and then read that Shakespearean insult. You could also use drag and drop for feedback. How are you feeling? Do you get it? Are you here? Are you there? Where are you at on a Likert scale? Put your thumb on the point 1 through 4. So there are a lot of different options for drag and drop. And you can also customize how many icons you put down. How long is this worm? And so you could have a text or a word answer that's not multiple choice. Right? I think it's 5, but it could be a little bit, 5.5. Maybe 5.4. And then that basic drawing premise again. Like, how are you feeling? So you can see there's a lot of ways you can use the creative stuff. My son and I have been practicing making faces for K3. Oddly enough, he's getting better at it than I am. So these are some of the basic types of slides that you can add to your Google slideshow for formative checks throughout a lesson. So I think of Pear Deck as a virtual form of me stopping in a class, presenting a question on the screen, and then giving kids a chance to respond to it. If you've been around long enough to remember the old smartboard clickers, where they could click answers in, and you get, this is a online Google slide form of collecting data in a similar live session. And I say live, but there's also other ways to do this at what they call student pace. We've been calling asynchronous, and some of the hip teachers are calling on-demand learning, following in the guides of Netflix. Okay, let's take a pause, see how we feel, see if we can generate any questions or follow-up. I'll practice my teacher wait time here. It's really long when you're the one waiting, isn't it? Okay, so that was about 30 seconds of wait time. Let's go forward. So I thought now that we got a sense of very broad strokes, what it is, what it looks like for students and ways we might be able to use it, how can we get a sense of the entire front, which you just saw, and back of the house, what the teacher sees? There are 3 basic views, and this is what some people complain about in the share screen world of teaching. The student view is what you just saw. The slides that are going to pop up as the student is joining the Pear Deck session. There's a classroom view, which if you're in the classroom might be on your projector. If you're at your computer, it's going to be on your monitor. If you're savvy and lucky enough to have dual monitors, you'd probably want to have that on a separate. The one you don't want the kids to ever see, most usually, is the teacher dashboard. That's because the teacher dashboard is going to be generating all the answers from those interactive slides. If you want the kids to feel safe to engage and take risks, then you probably don't want to be broadcasting their attempts over your monitor or over your screen. So to get a sense of how these 3 views work, let's try one together. This Pear Deck slideshow that I'm going to use, I did not create. Pear Deck created it. It's called a template. And later on in the session, I'll show you how you can find these templates to see if there's anything they've already built that you could just customize for a lesson or a unit. So that's the other part of Pear Deck. It's multifaceted, and they have an entire library of templates based on content and age that you could pluck from. So I thought, well, how could I demonstrate Pear Deck? And I was about to create a whole, I'm like, why would I do that? They already have one. This one's for community building, so it'd be something you might use in the beginning of the year. Thumbs up if you can see the Pear Deck building community template. Beautiful. Okay. So you'll see in my Google slide, I should close out the mail before we get more unwanted stuff. In my Google slide, Pear Deck is already installed. I don't even have to go to add-ons. It's right there. Okay. Let me move the gallery view for a second. When we click on the add-on in Google Slides, it will load the Pear Deck toolbar. This is the control center for Pear Deck. This is where you can edit slideshows. This is where you can start a Pear Deck session to start collecting answers. The same thing as, think of it as starting your presentation in Google Slides. It's where you can do all of your interactions with Pear Deck and also start the lesson. Sorry guys. On this dashboard here, you can see you can add slides, and you saw the different types that we've looked at already. And on any particular slide, you can add audio. That is your voice recording. So maybe you want to have more accessibility, or maybe you just want to expand upon or give directions in a different way to help with clarification. So you can always add a little microphone blurb of you speaking to any slide in the slideshow. Okay, so we've gone through the stuff that you've never seen before, how to build a Pear Deck thing, and now you want to see what does it look like? How am I actually going to use this as a teacher? Well, once you click Start Session, you're going to be asked a couple options. And I still feel like I'm going fast, but no one's stopping me, so I'm going to keep going. Everything I'm showing you is written out on my original slideshow with directions and explanations. So if it's not making sense now, try to stay with the broad strokes. And then when you want to get into the nitty gritty, I have a guide for you in the original workshop slideshow. Okay, so we start session. It's going to ask you what form of a lesson do you want? Do you want to do live, or do you want asynchronous? Do you want synchronous or asynchronous? Live or on demand? They call it instructor pace, which would be our live synchronous form, or student pace, which is asynchronous. They can complete it on their own pace and time. For our purposes today, I'm going to start with instructor pace. Now, this is not one of those two paths in the woods and you got to pick one and stay on it. You can go back and forth between these modes. So you start a lesson synchronously, you're in your 80-minute block, which is what we're doing at the high school. I'm not sure if that's across the board, but let's say you run out of time in your live session and you haven't gotten through your entire lesson. You can switch to student pace and ask them to finish it for the next session. Okay. If you get to the next session and they've not done any of it, and you're like, we need to come back and work on this, you can go back and lead them through it again. So these are not terminal decisions. You can go back and forth. Don't worry about that. So you're going to see a join code. I'm going to ask as many of you as possible to join this session. And to do that, you're going to go to join PD, PD for Pear Deck, joinpd.com. In a moment, I'll show you a code in that website again. While that's loading, let's take a look. Jenny, great question. I think it's around 30 seconds, but we can experiment today to confirm that. She's asking, is there a time limit for the voice of the slide? I thought it was 30 seconds, but don't quote me on that. Yes, Katie, I can show you how to find the community template. I didn't search very hard for it. It's both in that toolbar you just saw, but also the peardeck.com website. Okay. So here's the join code. Go to joinpd, one word, joinpd.com, and then enter Y as in young, N as in ninjas, R as in raise, U as in underwhelmed, and D as in drums. Young, ninjas, raise, underwhelmed, drums. And yes, Pear Deck creates really silly phrases for every code you create. Now I'm going to close this out, but don't worry, because when I load the teacher option, the dashboard, you can see the code is always there present. Okay. What you're currently looking at is the back of the house, the teacher dashboard. We still have the classroom dashboard here that I'm currently wiggling my mouse around. So I work with a smartboard, and then I have a separate monitor in the classroom. What you're seeing here, I would project on the smartboard. Students would have what you see right now on their monitors. And then you can see down at the bottom, there's a separate Windows that's popped up, and that is the back of the house dashboard. Now, why do they all look the same right now? Because we haven't really done anything yet. But you'll notice in the upper corner, I have 19 students who have joined. I know how many of you are in this session right now. That's useful if in Zoom you see you have 20 kids and there are only 7 in your Pear Deck. There are some kids that are not joining. The neat thing about the dashboard is that you can invite a class from Google Classroom. Now, depending on what level you're at, some of you are using Google Classroom, and some of you, I think, are using Seesaw. Is that accurate? Or are you all Google Classroom? Could somebody help me out?
K4 through second grade are using Seesaw. Grades 3 through 5 are using Google Classroom.
Okay. So for those of you with Google Classroom integration, right, you can invite a class. So this makes it even easier for the kids because you're going to send it right to Classroom, what they're used to. Okay. If you're not using Google Classroom, obviously, same thing, joinpd.com and the code. I see the question on the question. Yes, Chris.
Oh, I was going to ask the same question that was in chat about where's the 19?
So great question. You aren't going to see that on your screen because you're a student right now and I'm running the teacher dashboard. So I am sharing on my screen the back of the house. So you're seeing the front of the house and the back of the house. Does that make sense or am I mistaken?
Can you show the back of the house right now? We don't see the 19 from your share.
Oh, excuse me. I see the question. Let me try a new share. Do we see it now?
Yes. Upper right-hand corner.
And you see does the roster pop up for you as well?
Yes.
Yep.
Perfect. So remember that mood slide in the very beginning? Well, here's your roster. And here's how they're all feeling. Some of us don't have emotion. Some of us are happy. Some of us not so happy. And that's okay. So, I stand at the door every day and greet my students. And based on how they greet me back, I know what kind of mood they are and probably a plan on how to approach them as things go on throughout the lesson. So Carrie, I'm probably not going to push too much today. She doesn't look that happy. Caleb, maybe a couple of jokes at my expense and his expense, who knows, right? If you have somebody in your Pear Deck that shouldn't be there, you can block them, the 3 bars on the side. So sometimes these codes get out. Maybe there's another sibling in the house. Maybe a knucklehead posted it on their TikTok, and next thing you know, you're getting, nope, they won't be able to come in. You can block them, okay? So this is the back of the house. Anything else in here I want you to see? Let me move my, so we all have technical difficulties, and I was trying to get a TV that was working for me this morning for a second monitor, and it decided not to for whatever reason. And so a lot of these things I try to have on separate monitors so that we weren't moving around things, but you should be able to see the bottom of the dashboard where my mouse is. It says presenting. It has a space for notes for if you have notes that you've written for your presentation, and then a little caret to move through your slideshow. If at any moment in your session you realize I need more feedback, I don't know if they get this, or you know what, now that I'm teaching this, there's something I really wish I would have asked. You can ask on-the-fly questions. So you can create an on-the-fly interactive slide to get information from your students with the new prompt button here. So enough talk, let's try an interactive one. You can see on my side it says waiting for responses. On your side, you're seeing a question, and on the classroom dashboard, the question is, what's one thing you really like to do? And this would be a text-based answer, but I think you can also draw on it. I apologize in advance if you can hear my kids running around upstairs. Daycare was a swing and a miss today. Okay. As you answer, go ahead and look up at my screen so you can see how this works. But everyone who's answering, I can scroll through and see their slide. The students obviously cannot see this. You're looking at a student's screen right now. You cannot see this. The classroom presentation is just showing the original slide with none of the editing. So I can scroll through and see what people are writing. Meg likes to ski. Well, I can star that, and that's a question I can like or keep and use later on to share. I'm a snowboarder, so of course I'm not going to star that. And in fact, I'm going to give Meg feedback. Your parents raised you wrong. Okay, we're going to send her that feedback, and she can see that on her side. Okay. Now, if you're like, I want to see what everybody's thinking in a more compact form. I don't want to scroll through these large tiles. They give you some options for viewing in the corner here. Grid layout will make them smaller. So now you can see everybody's. You can also see which ones you've starred. You can see which ones you've given feedback for because the little dialogue icon has filled in. Depending on the type of question, maybe you're getting a feedback for how comfortable they are with a lesson, and you've asked them to put a drag and drop on a Likert scale. Likert scale is like 1 through 4 or 1 through 7. You can do an overlay. Sometimes I do this with English when I ask them to think of a word to describe something, and then we'll put the words all over each other to see what they did. So for this question, clearly the overlay doesn't help us much, but it is an option that's there. Grid tends to be the most common, but it's hard to read. Okay, let me give one other student a response. Jenny is not in a good mood today, so I am not going to be playful with her. She loves to garden. I do too. Garden salsa is the bomb. That was my colloquial there. I hope you don't mind. Okay, let's check the chat real quick. Susan, great question. Can I table that for now to put it into a moment where it might make more sense with the general topic? Is that okay? I will answer that though, and if I don't, please call me out. Okay. So we can see that there's one person who's not responded. Is that Janine Johnson? I'm going to check my roster. Janine Johnson has no emotion, so I don't know how I want to approach this student about not participating, but this question also isn't very central, so maybe I'll call this a wash and move forward. So that's kind of nice too, right? Just like in the classroom, you can see who's responding, who's not, and what they've done. Okay. Here's another type of question. I can't see it unless I move my Zoom bar. What was something you were learning? So a text question. Now, if I want to give, let's see if I can do it here. Oops. I'm sorry, guys. I got Zoom bars and Pear Deck bars everywhere. Okay. Let's move this here. So I just locked your screen, which is an option down in the toolbar on the dashboard, on the teacher dashboard. So let's say you want to give them a certain amount of time. There is a timer option. I'm not seeing it right now because I have other things on my little bitty screen. There is a timer option for a question, which we can find together later. But let's say that you're done. You want to see where they're at this point. You can lock the screen. They can't continue to answer that question. And that's just down here, lock and unlock. Okay. So let's see what we got. There's Pear Deck, how to use Seesaw. You know, I am learning how to use Seesaw as well because my K3 son, my wife is very frustrated with Seesaw. I am a little less, but I still feel your pain. If you're a baby with teething, oh my God, Katie, me too. I got a 3-year-old and an 18-month-old, and they're both running around over my head right now. Yeah. Okay. So if we wanted to, you could see it that way. Because this answer is a little bit smaller, it's a little bit easier to see these responses. If we wanted to overlay, can we do that with words? No, we cannot. All right. Let's do a couple more of these and then we'll move on because I think you're kind of getting the sense of it here. We don't need to answer that one. Let's see if we can do a colorful one. Do I have any drag and drops? Oh, here's a multiple choice. Okay, let's do that one. We'll do this one and one draw one, and then I'll show you how to end a session and what that looks like, as well as answer the student-paced feedback questions. Okay, 18 and 19. So you can see, based on the types of questions, which grid do you pick becomes more relevant. Here we have the overlay grid, which for a poll like this makes more sense, as opposed to the first slide where all the words just went on top of each other. Cool. All right, let's try the last one for this session, and then we'll talk about a little bit more of what happens when you're done with a session or want to transition it. So here's a very simple Likert scale. And if we do the overlay view, we can see where the majority of the class is at, right? So that's one of the good purposes of the drag and drop slide and the overlay view. I mean, most of us in this particular session like it, but also think it's hard for them. If you're looking at how to gauge the disposition of a class or their current level, drag and drop with overview is pretty useful. Still got one moving. And Susan Atkins is still trying to figure out which opinion she has. If I wanted to give her feedback, let's see if I can find her. Oh, she's not having a good day, so I want to say something uplifting and encouraging for her. And she already responded. She beat me to it. Okay, so at this point, let's hypothetically say we've ran out of class time. I could go to the three dots near the end and click Turn on Student Pace. This would change the session to asynchronous, and that would allow students to finish on their own time. You can still end that session later. So you might turn it on, and in a moment I'll show you how. Go back and turn it off when you're ready. Why would you want to end a session? Well, besides the fact that you've completed it and you're satisfied, when you end a session, you can give students this thing called takeaways. So let me turn this to student pace, just so you can see that. I'm still on my dashboard, right? I could close out this dashboard and your session would continue to go. But now that you can see, if you were to, you can continue moving through the slideshow. Before, you could only move to the slide that I put you at. So that's one of the fundamental differences of asynchronous versus synchronous, student pace versus instructor pace. Now I'm ready to end this session. I feel confident that you guys have got it. You can see I'm in student pace, so it asks me, are you sure you want to leave? Like, are you ending the session or are you just leaving the dashboard? I am sure that I want to end the session because I want to be able to give you some feedback. Notice I've chosen to publish student takeaways. Student takeaways are their receipt, if you will. They will get a Google Doc in their Google Drive that has every slide from this slideshow with their answers on it. What they won't get on the takeaway, however, is your specific feedback. Okay, I want them to have that information. Well, the takeaway is a Google Doc that both you and the student can edit. So you could go back through that takeaway and add information. In our virtual world right now, that has some function, but in the everyday face-to-face, you could imagine that the takeaway could become the homework slip. Finish this for homework, and then I can give you feedback after the fact as well on that doc so that you have it. So it gives you that edit ability. So I'm going to save and end session at this time. If you were in that Google Classroom, I could share it directly to you. I have not done this function, so here's my caveat. My assumption would be Pear Deck is not going to send the entire takeaway list to the class for everyone to see everyone's answers. But I cannot confirm that because I've not done this with a Google Class yet. So just FYI. When it says return home, oop, you lost my screen. It will take you, oops, sorry guys. It'll take you back. Now, typically, when you close a session out, it'll take you to the Pear Deck website. I'm going to pause there for a moment and show you what the next step is after I check the chat. Great question. Lori's asking, how do we locate that particular doc in their Google Classroom? Is it named with the title of the session? Okay, so let's take a looky. So on your end, you will have, let me confirm you can see what I'm seeing. Yep, okay. On your end, Pear Deck, just like Classroom creates folders and Screencastify creates folders, Pear Deck will create a folder as well. This is your side of the house, and then I'll talk about their side of the house. In Pear Deck, you'll have takeaways and then the decks that you've created through Pear Deck. I'll show you decks for just a second. So these are ones that you've used through their library. takeaways. Okay, Pear Deck Workshop was the name of our session. Oh, excuse me, that was not. Anyway. Let me give you an example of what the takeaway looks like, and then we can talk about how the students can find theirs. So Google Doc, it has the questions and the slides. This is the actual slideshow that I was starting with, so that's why it's confusing to you, and that's my apologies for that. Okay, playing with the pair. That's what we named the session. Here are all our responses from today. I clicked on a random one. We'll ignore the name, hopefully. So you can see the student gets each question or the responses to it. It's loading slowly, and I apologize for that. But you could see you could print this out for kids if it was small, and they can go back and revisit for reteaching and add notes. If it's a quiz, they have their answers. It's a formative quiz. They have their answers to guide them through maybe reteaching or self-directed learning. For students to find their particular doc, Pear Deck hasn't made that super easy yet. You would go to Shared with Me and look for the name of that particular folder, or that particular file, excuse me. You could direct them to that. You could also resend it to them. So you can see it's the name of the slideshow, Pear Deck Building Community. Playing with the Pair is the session, and then the student's name. So they could search for the Google slideshow that you started with. They could search for the name of the session that you saved as, or they can search for their name. This is saved both with you and with them, and both of you can edit this so you can continue having dialogue on this Google Doc. Yes, there is an export option. So, I'm sorry, I forget if you can see those questions. Let me restate the question. The question was, is there a spreadsheet printout for the whole class? Okay. So back in that, I got to keep moving Zoom around. Back in that original slideshow, the community builder that we started with, where I clicked Start Lesson to give you those slides and the join code, you could go through this toolbar, this dashboard, to get that information. And you can always go to peardeck.com to see any of the sessions you've created, any of the sessions that are active, and any of the sessions that you've already ended. Okay. But if you're working quicker, working faster, you don't want to type in a new website, it's right here embedded in the toolbar. So here you can review sessions, and that will take you automatically to the website I was just referencing. Carrie's asking, can we turn the takeaway feature off? Yes. And I'll show you settings now that we're in the website. So you can see in peardeck.com, which is all that dashboard took me to, here are the sessions I have, some that are live still, which means they're open, some that are closed. I was worried as a teacher that if I'm going to teach, particularly at the high school level, if I'm going to teach a Pear Deck lesson to my second period English 11 class, and we don't finish, and I turn it to student mode, meaning it's still on, what happens when I try to start a Pear Deck session with my fourth period English 11 classes? Well, each one is a new session, and so you can have the same slideshow going with different Pear Deck sessions. Okay, so you can keep things open and then reuse it for a different class later that day. I'm not sure how much of that translates to other levels or other grade levels, but in the Pear Deck, when you sign in, and like everything we do nowadays, it's just signing in with your Google account. You'll go to sessions, and if you want to figure out how to get that from the website, this is what the website looks like. If you're wondering, where did I get that template from? It's right here. Everything is directly here and in that dashboard. So pop-up activities, vocabulary, Pear Deck, Google Slides to create a lesson. You can find that here, and then the library is also, let me see if my slide will go, our template library. Let me make sure you can see that. Yep. So the template library is on the website, and it's also right here on that dashboard directly in Google Slide. So you could open up a blank Google Slide and then look for a template inside the Pear Deck dashboard and go from there. And that's what I did to find this one. It wasn't very difficult for me. And I'm not a big template person. I usually try to construct from my own, which is not always the best way to do things. Okay, so in the sessions, you can see you still have some options. You can reopen that session. So you made it, oopsies, you're learning Pear Deck, oopsies, close it out, didn't mean to, you can still open it. You can rename it. You can archive the session so it won't be on this view. I've had a lot more sessions I've been playing with that are not here. And Carrie, the long answer to your question, here's where you can export to spreadsheet. I've not actually done that before, so let's click it and see what happens. We're learning together. Okay. And so that's the kind of information you're going to get in the slideshow. Usernames, the slides and their answers. I guess if it's a drawing slide, you won't be able to see it perhaps. So that's kind of neat. Oh, wow. They give you the XY percentages. Interesting. Okay. So the export might be more useful for certain slides and information than others. Susan's asking to collect all student responses, you just keep the session open all day. Susan, can you turn your microphone on for a second? I just want to follow up with you. Are you asking if students didn't, go ahead.
Right, so we send out a lesson and kids pretty much have the whole day to finish their assignments because we're not teaching very much synchronously. So, because if I want to see what everybody did, I have to kind of wait till everybody's done.
Oh, you can go into the session. Yeah. So you remember that dashboard that you saw when I turned off live, the live teacher-led one?
Mm-hmm.
You can still have that dashboard and see what students are responding to. So you can check in before it ends.
Okay. So, but like if I send out a math lesson and right away in the morning and I want everybody to complete it, I just leave that session open all day until the next
Oh, I see.
day or
Yeah. So yeah, when you end it, they will no longer be able to answer in it.
So I have to keep it open and put it on student paste mode, pretty much.
Correct. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And then if you want to send out takeaways, or you want to kind of gather that information, or you say, I got to stop here and see where you're at, I can't wait any longer, you could end that session. You could also go back into that session, Susan, I'm sorry, I think it was, you could go back into that session and go to each slide that has an answer that you're looking for and just take that data too, right? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for asking. Okay. Other questions right now about where we're at?
Can I add a thought regarding feedback?
Sure.
I think, when we think about our 3 through 5 students, navigating lots of things to go back into slides is unlikely. So I think as an educator thinking through it, it gives me valuable information, seeing what kids do, that I can then use some of those slides either in my next lessons to address misconceptions, or if there's feedback I want them to respond to, I might embed that in a small group session. Like I might start by saying, everyone, pull up slide 4. You have feedback from me. I'm going to give you 5 minutes to respond to and make adjustments based on that feedback. Because we know kids it requires a lot of self-direction that most of us adults might lack too, to constantly go back and find documents to see if anybody might have commented.
Good point. Yeah, and I do apologize. Obviously, my lens is high school, so a lot of my default settings in my brain about how to use this as a teacher might not be congruent with your experiences. If it makes you feel any better, a lot of our experts we get are grade school people who are telling high school people strategies.
Chris, you were doing awesome. I just thought that I would add that elementary lens to the group thought here.
Thanks, Meg. You're pretty awesome for a skier.
You should see me, Borg. It's pathetic.
I am following up. I'm proud of myself for remembering this because I often go off on tangents. And I forget who asked, but somebody asked very early on, can we turn off takeaways for students? Once you're at your peardeck.com login, clicking on your account, you can change some settings here. Okay. That opening classroom climate question is not default. You can turn it on or turn it off if it works for you or not. I've not done anything other than have it on. There is an embedded immersive reader in Pear Deck. I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with that. If you haven't added immersive readers as a Chrome extension, I encourage you to do that. We've pushed it to the Greenfield School District web store, and so students should be able to access that too. Immersive readers just clarify things, make things pop up, easier to read, and oftentimes will have voices for them to read along. I've even gotten a couple Chrome extensions that can help translate words as they read as well. So that's kind of neat. And if you are using Google Classroom, here's where you want to make sure you're embedding it. And if you say, you know what, takeaways are not working for me, turn that off, bing, bang, boom. Or turn it off for now, create your lesson, run it, and then come back and turn it on for later. Remember, if you made an oopsies and you have takeaways set, at the end of the session, you can choose not to publish them. You're going to want to make sure for, I believe, all of our purposes that you're having students sign in with their Google account as well. Okay. Ooh, good question. What is the best way to teach students and use Pear Deck while on Zoom? Well, ideally 2 monitors, which sometimes we see is a swing and a miss, like my current situation right now. The only problem with Zoom is that it's ribbon, it's overlay, overlays on top of the Pear Deck overlay, which overlays on top of the slide you're trying to look at. I think that's kind of a personal preference, depending on your current situation and technology. However, if you are in a classroom with smart boards or desktops, you could use those as extended monitors and have things separated that way and share. And I believe, and I forget what site everybody's at, I know that Aaron, excuse me if I say his last name wrong, is it Duran? He's been sharing things that seem pretty useful at the other sites besides the high school. And he might be another point of contact if I can't respond to you as quickly as possible. I have not taught Pear Deck to students on Zoom yet, so I'll be in the same boat as you are. But I want to throw this carrot out there, and I have no association with Pear Deck, but the nice thing I see in this is that I feel like I could use this in the classroom when we go back to face-to-face normal lessons. Whether that's walking around with a Chromebook in your hand or an iPad looking at feedback, you could still use this functionality in a classroom in a traditional setting.